Pat McGrath finally came out with another Mothership palette, and I was so excited to not see any more pinks and to actually see a green shade. And I was especially interested to see what kind of shimmers would be in the palette, because it seems like they've retired the original Baked Astral formula. It was such a signature formula for Pat McGrath, and the Moonlit Seduction palette before this one was the first one to not feature any baked shades. So it seems like they're kind of heading in another direction. But let's take a look at this new Mothership palette. I did get the limited edition, beautiful kind of ombre purple packaging. I did order this from Pat McGrath website, and I did get 10% off, which is really nice because this is a $120 palette. Other than the purple, this does feel just like my other Mothership palettes, so it has quite a bit of weight to it, and I've been holding it up for long enough. So let me show you the inside color story. It is definitely a little bit more colorful for Pat McGrath, but we do still have some neutrals. So these two shades are Blitz, and then these two and then this shade are Astral, and I have to say, definitely no bake shades. These do not feel like bake shades. That being said, this one especially feels just like the texture from the Moonlit Seduction palette. But I did notice, and I will talk about this a little bit more in detail in the comparison portion of the video, but I feel like the Astral shades from the Blitz shades don't feel that much more different. So I'm not sure how come some of them are called Astral and some of them are called Blitz. I feel like they feel very similarly. I feel like some of these have a little bit of like a almost thicker, slightly waxier feel to them. I was mostly looking forward to seeing this shade in person because it is very different for Pat McGrath. It's not a duochrome, it's not a multichrome, but it has different colorful flecks throughout it, and it's very reminiscent of what the smaller indie brands are doing. And also, speaking of multichromes and duochromes, none of these are multichromes or duochromes, which I kind of was expecting them to be maybe one multichrome duochrome. So maybe this shade is supposed to be kind of that thing, but without being that thing, if that makes sense. Palette first got revealed, some people were saying that it looked very similar to the Dragon Eye palette from What's Up Beauty, which is a much smaller indie brand. And while in the photos, I did see some resemblances, specifically with these two green shades. Once I got the Pat McGrath palette and I opened it and put it next to this one, I felt like they were pretty different and especially swatched out. I will insert some swatches. I feel in the swatches you can really see the difference between the shades because they did look kind of similar when they were kind of straight on in just like a photo, but swatched out you can tell that there's a lot of duochrome shifty shades in the What's Up Beauty palette, but there are no shifty shades in the Pat McGrath. So let's get into the detailed swatches of the shimmer shadows, some comparison swatches, and I'll show you how I created this look, and then I'll give you some of my thoughts at the end of the video. I'm going to be swatching these two at a time. First up is Divine Dawn, and here is Cosmic Fantasies. These are both pretty smooth, and Divine Dawn is definitely more on the satin side. They have a little bit of a thickness to them, but they're not squishy. They just have like a little bit of like a tug. This one, not so much. Divine Dawn is a very pale cream shade with a little bit of a pink tone. Cosmic Fantasies has a brown base with purpley pink sparkles throughout it that are pretty even, but it definitely looks like they're separate from the base, but they're super, super fine. And these you can see are very smooth. There's maybe just ever so slightly kind of a shift in this shade. These next two shades are the Blitz shades. So here is Radiant Rhapsody and here's Bronze Supernova. I'm not sure what about them makes them Blitz versus Astral because they seem very similar in texture from swatching these already before this video. And also these two feel different to the touch and they just have different qualities about them. I did find that the Bronze Supernova is a little bit strange. It's a little bit dry, and I feel like it can look a little patchy. So I feel like it's one of those shades you really want to kind of rub in, but it is so beautiful. And I love the vibrancy of Radiant Rhapsody, but I feel like they're different. There's definitely more shine in Rhapsody, and it also feels a little less dry, and it has a little bit more tug as you spread it. But they are definitely both shiny, but again, you can see a little bit more sparkle in Radiant Rhapsody, which this one I would describe as kind of like a true vibrant teal with gold and blue flecks throughout it. While Bronze Supernova is just that, it is very bronzy, but I feel like it has a little bit of a lighter reflect to it. It's like a light cream reflect, not quite gold. And then the close-up you can see the different sparkles in the green shade. These next three shades are the Astral shades, so Astral Eden Envy, Astral Sunset Splendor, and Astral Iridescent Iris. To me, these two shades felt similarly to the Blitz Radiant Rhapsody shade. While Iridescent Iris is different in texture, it just has a little bit of a slightly larger particle size, and I will kind of talk about that in the comparison section especially. This one is super, super opaque. I did have a little bit of staining from the teal shade, but I was able to get that off pretty easily. I feel a little bit of grittiness in this astral shade, which is why I don't really understand why these are astral and not Blitz. Because based on if we're going by texture and or level of shine, Astral Eden Envy is a beautiful olive toned antique gold green shade. Astral Sunset is a peachy pink, definitely leaning a little bit more orange than kind of like a true peach. Iridescent Iris has no base and has blue and pink sparkles throughout it. So I don't think any of these are necessarily multi-chromes. I think if anything, maybe I would say some of these are maybe a duochrome, but not even that. Not even the iridescent shade is not a multi-chrome. It just is very dimensional because of the different flecks throughout it. So I have 4 other McGrath palettes, one of which already doesn't have any of the baked astral shades, which is Moonlit Seduction. I'm trying to figure out how to hold these together, but I feel like you can really tell there's quite a bit of a different texture here. These are the original astral shades in texture versus the new astral shades. These just look much more like a regular type of shimmer shadow where it has shine, it has smoothness, it is beautiful, but there's just something about these. They feel way more special. They also are duochromes, if not multi-chromes, so they have that going on for them, and they just have extra level of sparkle. So for example, here's the new astral, and then this is Bronze Seduction astral shade. You can see there's quite a bit of a difference, and especially close up. See all that sparkle and shine? Next for comparison, Pat McGrath. Talk to my team from Patrick Ta. Pat McGrath, Do You Know Who I Am? I actually feel like some of the shades, not all of them, not in all the duos from Patrick Ta, feel more on par with the original astral shades. So you can see there's definitely quite a bit of a difference between, obviously, not just the shades. The Talk to My Team duo was my least favorite from Patrick Ta because it's definitely less shiny, and some of the rest of the duos have a way more sparkly texture like this one. Here is another layer of that one. This one definitely will need a glitter glue, but this is very much very, very astral. And you can just see textural difference and opacity as well. I did a dedicated video on these Too Faced Disco Crush eyeshadows, and turns out that this is the same exact texture. The shades are a little bit different, but it's the same exact particle texture, the way it feels, the way it swatches as the astral shades from the Moonlit Seduction palette, which is what I was expecting going into this newer palette, that the astral shades are going to be this exact texture. They're not. Only one of them is, and it's the iridescent. So let's take a look at some comparisons. Can you tell which one is Disco Crush and which one is Pat McGrath? This one is Too Faced Disco Crush in Fairy Dust, and this is the shade from the Pat McGrath Moonlit Seduction palette. And I mean, the texture on par. The shade is slightly different, but the texture is extremely, extremely similar. And here they are compared. Too Faced Fairy Dust, the shade from Moonlit Seduction. Too Faced Hypnotic, right shade from Moonlit Seduction. And this is the Astral Iridescent Iris shade from the newest palette. So on par. Shades are a little bit different, but texture, sparkle level, everything about them. I was really expecting all the astral shades in the new palette to be this texture. And then close up, I mean, they look almost indistinguishable. And closer in color once they're swatched out. So for the Astral Sunset Splendor shade, I was kind of expecting something more like this. Because again, this is that formula of the astral shades from the Moonlit Seduction and then this iridescent shade. There's such a difference in shine. I'm out of space here, but I'm just gonna swatch right here. I think if I showed you these two next to each other without context, you would definitely think this shade is the astral shade. Next up for comparison is Iridescent Iris, Luminescence from the Angles of Illumination palette from Bella Beaute Bar, Willow from ShineBySD, and the first shade from the first quad from Clionadh Cosmetics from their holiday launch. I think the Pat McGrath and the Clionadh shade have the most in common in terms of the shift. These are shifting a little bit too green, while these two don't have a green shift. But sparkle-wise, the Clionadh shade has a lot of green sparkles throughout it, so that really sets it from the Iridescent Iris shade. And texture-wise, they're also different, and this one definitely has a lot more purple. And close up. For the look, I'm going to be dipping into this green, then this shade, and then this shade. And I primed with the Pat McGrath eyeshadow primer. And I'm first just going to go on the outer corner with the dark green. And I just want to kind of smoke this out with this. And I'm just kind of packing it down first. And then just slowly blending it out. And then just adding on a little bit more. Really want to make sure I have that depth in the outermost area. And then I'm taking just some translucent powder and I'm just going over the edges since there's nothing to blend the shade out with. Picking up this shade, which has a bunch of kind of sparkles in it. Don't let me get started. If you've been on my channel, you know how I feel about these kinds of shades. They just blend away. But I feel like there's probably a reason they did that. Anyways, I'm gonna put that into kind of the center of my crease and then blend it inwards. And then I'm just lightly kind of connecting them right here, but I'm not blending them together because that will definitely muddy up quite a bit. These two tones together. And then I'm just gonna take a little bit of setting powder again on the edge. Picked up the green shade. And this shade does stain on me when I was swatching it a couple of times. So I'm hoping that it won't stain my lid really. And I'm just gonna putting that in the center of my lid and blending it into the green outer corner. And I'm putting it on an angle because I'm gonna be highlighting the inner corner lid crease situation. And then I'm just gonna bring it up a little bit. Picked up Iridescent Iris also in this applicator. And I'm just gonna swoop that up into the inner lid, up into my crease, and then up to kind of hug the green. And I had pretty much almost no fallout. I think I see maybe like one sparkle here, but I'm really, really glad I used this applicator. I don't think that these shades would be particularly fallouty, but just wanted to make sure that I didn't have any fallout. And here's the finished look. I want to preface this, I knew what I was getting into buying this palette. I knew that I'm not in love with the color story. I actually feel like this color story is not that unique. Oh yeah, there's some pops of shimmers, some neutral shimmers, and then a green matte, but I felt like overall it wasn't like a really cohesive color story. So flower petals and green, I just feel like for me, there's nothing about this color story that really just screams it to me. Like it doesn't fully get there. But that's just a personal opinion. I did a look off camera with this palette and I feel like I'm gonna have to put the palette down because I just put cream on my hands and it's constantly slipping. So back to the mattes. I have never been the biggest fan of Pat McGrath mattes. I think they're nice. I think they perform nicely. I think they build nicely, but they also can be really opaque depending on how much you pick up. I like that there's not a lot of kick up in the pan as well. So they're nice, but they're not my favorite. I think their shimmers are definitely what really was the standout for me, which unfortunately, I'm not a huge fan of where these shimmers are going. Specifically the Astral and Blitz shades. I think they're really similar in texture, and I almost feel like you could just call all four of them Blitz or Astral and I would not question it. That being said, my favorite shade is definitely Iridescent Iris. I also love iridescent shades, so I'm automatically biased towards just in general those kinds of shades, especially if it's a nice formula. And I feel like this right here, I think if the other Astral shades were this exact texture and formulation, and I don't necessarily also mean opacity, I just mean the way that the sparkles and the flecks are. It's just a little bit of a different kind of texture, and it also has a certain type of sparkle about it, very similarly to the Too Faced shadows that I compared with the Moonlit Seduction Astral shade. So I was expecting the Astral shades to be this, basically, to be the same Astral shades as in the Moonlit Seduction, and I feel like that is quite a bit of an inconsistency on their end between this palette and their previous Mothership palette. As for the satin shading here, I don't really love satins, but there are some formulas of satins that I feel like are really, really beautiful. They look really stunning. They, I feel like, accomplish what you want a satin to accomplish, and I just feel like this one's a little bit too thick and the sheen is a little bit kind of powdery. It's the best way I can describe it, and I know that Pat McGrath always has this kind of light creamish satin shade that is the first shade in the palette, and I just kind of feel like at this point we can let that go. Maybe it's a different kind of satin, maybe it's a different color. I feel like it would be better if it was just a matte or a type of satin that actually kind of acts like a matte, but this one, I would personally not use this one in the crease, and I can't really use this one to blend out some of the other shades either. There's one shimmer that I'm not sure how I feel about out, and it is this one right here. I feel like even in the pan, I can just tell it almost has a little bit of kick up in the pan, which none of these other shades have, especially not the other Blitz shade. And when I first swatched it, it was pretty patchy. It looked like the base pigment was separating from the kind of top pigment, so whatever the mica particle size was, it was not really meshing together. But after swatching it some more, I did notice it did kind of even out a little bit. I need to really kind of work this one into the skin to get it to be really nice and smooth and very kind of sheen-like. So overall, I do like it once it's actually like applied, and I like that you can layer it a little bit, but I just feel like I'm not gonna be like necessarily going like this on the lid. I feel like this is one of those palettes that if you are a ride or die fan of Pat McGrath, you think she can do no wrong, and you love collecting these, then I think you're going to enjoy it. But if you're someone that likes to really think about what eyeshadow palettes you're bringing into your collection, especially at such a high price tag, I would recommend you add this to your wish list and you just give it a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of months to decide if you still really want it. Also, for sure, wait for a sale. I would not recommend buying this palette at a full price. I even got it 10% off, and I wish I got it 20% off. For me, the value just is not there for $128, especially when you have smaller indie brands coming out with palettes like this one right here. What's Up Beauty? This palette is $45. There are 2 more pans than the Pat McGrath. They are smaller pans, so you're getting less product, but I don't really feel like that matters. Everyone has so much eyeshadow, so I do like that they are smaller pans, and it also helps to keep the price down. I do prefer these mattes over the Pat McGrath matte. You're getting so many special, shifty, sparkly, duochrome, multi-chrome shades in this palette for $45. So I just feel like I'm kind of more on this end than the $128 no multi-chromes, no duochromes. Yes, the packaging is nicer. Yes, you're getting a little bit more product. It really depends on what you're looking for and what kind of shimmers and mattes you like to use. So I hope this video was helpful. If you enjoy this kind of content and you love watching sparkly, shifty, shiny shades being swatched and also comparisons to help you make the best buying decision, then I will put up some other videos on the screen so you can keep watching. And thank you so much for being here. I hope to see you next time.